Oh, here we go. The mighty Afghanistan. It's their time to shine as Matt rubs his hands. Right, go on then, Matt. Off you go.
I'm going to have to start and keep it fairly light, but there is a bit you've got to address. So Taliban banned cricket in 96 to 2001, but they're open to it coming back, which is a positive, I guess, that we can say. They do sack the CEO of the Afghan Cricket Board on the 22nd of September. Might have caused a bit of a wobble, and then also the captain announced that he's going to resign the captaincy of Rashid Khan after not being consulted enough around the squad announcement. Suppose he just finds it out through Twitter, which is not great for anyone. But the actual squad itself hasn't got too many shocks, I don't think. Apart from the fact you realise that they could legitimately bowl 16 overs of top quality spin. And you've got Rashid Khan, Mujeeb, Rahman, Nabi, and Qais Ahmed, who's a bit of a lover boy of mine. I love him so much. He's just my favourite at the moment.
They've got another one as well. They've got who's a 16-year-old? Usher, what's his name again?
Noor
Ahmed. Yeah. They've got a left arm unorthodox. I think the right word. Left arm wrist spinner. So technically, they could have 20? Yeah, 20 overs of spin.
If you really wanted to, yeah. I mean, obviously, I think what sums up their plan of attack is the fact they hired Sean Tate as the bowling coach to try and get as much as they can out of the seam bowling. I think that sort of sums up, given that Tate had one skill, kept getting picked despite being terrible at everything else. So one of those. I'm not sure how much help he'll be, to be honest with you. But I think that what is their only sort of plan of attack that they're going to rely on is going to be the fact that conditions are definitely going to be on their side for this. I think the batting is going to be their biggest concern. It's been dominant at the associate level, but it's not really been tested, I think, over a prolonged period of time against kind of more quality attacks. But also the fact that it's been played in UAE, it should hopefully be a load of slow turners for them, which should give them a bit of an advantage. I think they're going to be hoping that their bowling makes 140 look like 200 on some of these pitches. But I did put out some interesting stats around them playing in the UAE. So they've actually won the most games out of anyone in the UAE, having won 26 out of 33. That's going to give them the closest thing to home field advantage. They've played the most amount of games, apart from Pakistan, who were 6 or 7 behind, I think, in that. They also averaged nearly a run and a half more in the UAE than anywhere else in the world. And they were one of the only few countries, actually, for whom that's true. So England averaged 1.3 runs less per wicket in the UAE. Pakistan, 3 runs left. Australia averaged a full 10 runs less, which makes me very happy. Sri Lanka just 1.5 behind, and New Zealand are 6 runs behind when they play in the UAE. Quite a lot of the team are playing in the Paul's Everest Premier League. Not much of the IPO experience, unfortunately, which may hinder them. I think that there's an element of how much these players have got kind of match fitness kind of playing on at the moment. But I am fairly confident that they should be pretty well. I think any team that's got Rashid Khan, who obviously was the T20 player of the decade, should always have a good hope. He's also got the second best bowling average in the UAE as well. Makes a massive difference. There's also Mohammad Nabi, who's looked particularly scratchy in the 100. I don't think he scored more than 10 in every game. But he does also have the most man of the match awards in T20 internationals, having got 13 at 81 games he's played. And he's also got the second most wickets in the UAE as well. So I think they have to rely on these kind of big name players to kind of really push them over the line and win them the games. And what you're hoping, I think, with someone like Nabi is that he can score 30 from 10, just to kind of swing the kind of the balance of power in one game. Mujeeb Rahman looks pretty decent. He's only 20, but he's played 150 T20s, which is pretty incredible for someone of that age. Only 19 of them have been internationally, though, and against associate nations. So I think they're fortunately are going to rely on how well people like Rahman and Qais Ahmed bowl for them, and if they can sort of live up to the high standards set by Khan and Nabi. If they do, I think they are going to be pretty dangerous. I think, unfortunately, the way that they've got in their group with India and Pakistan, in a way, sort of nullifies some of their effectiveness. I think if they were in a group with New Zealand, England, and Australia, I think they would. I'm not saying that they'd walk the group, but I think they would definitely be able to beat 2 of those fairly comfortably, just to kind of pure spin it to win it, really, which is a classic British cricket phrase I've been talking about over the years. I'm pretty confident that they're going to be pretty decent throughout all of this. Whether they win it, I don't know, but I think looking at the age of the team they've got in the next 2 years, well, when's the next one? Is it next year?
Next year.
I mean, maybe not 1 year's experience might not be too much for them, but maybe in a couple more after that. You then got to replace people like Nabi. I think the batting looks particularly weak, to be honest with you. Which I think if that fires, great. But again, if they're playing 120, plays 120, I'm probably going to back them to spin teams out and put the pressure on that way.
They've got some big hitters at the top with Rahman Gurbaz and Zazai and as Ray saying here, Najibullah Zadran. My interesting thing is, and question to you, for me, is where do they get the wickets from in terms of seamers, or do they need to?
I think it's one of those. Not every team likes to go for the spin on the power play, do they? I don't think Afghanistan will get much of a choice, unfortunately. They're going to have to sneak a couple in at that point, and it might be the Nabi trying to just kind of fire a few in just to try and kind of unsettle people, and just hope the other team just takes 4 or 5 off the first couple of overs just to kind of slow it down, because the pace bowlers are going to get attacked because they're going to be the ones who present the least amount of threat. They've got a decent left arm by the name of what's his name, Shapur Zadran. He looks pretty nippy, and also left-handers tend to be quite useful in T20s, kind of pushing it across or in as and when needed. I think the pace is going to be what lets them down, unfortunately. But I think they're going to be deliberately throwing that ball into the pitch from the boundary to try and scuff it as much as possible, get as much grip on that ball, and just kind of almost take the seamers out of the equation really for the day.
Yeah, I agree, guys. What questions do you guys have? Go on, Ali. Go
on. Historically, since 2015, Afghanistan haven't done too well in any World Cup or World event. What's different this year?
I'm not one to talk about nebulous things like sort of inspiration, but I think in terms of inspiration, this is probably the best you're ever going to get for that in terms of kind of having a reason to put on the show. Having said that, also it's been a pretty horrific year for them. I'm sure they've got family members kind of connected to events that are probably struggling, I suspect, as well. So yes, hopefully that gives them a reason to perform as well as they can. But having said that, I think you're hoping that someone like Rashid Khan takes that next step and really proves why he's that dominant at most of the T20 leagues around the world. Unfortunately, he only gets 4 overs. And yes, when he bats, he can be quite useful. You still need more of a rounded team to do this. I think they've got some individual excellence, really, that's going to be really suited to this. It's just whether they can be enough of a match winner enough times. I mentioned it about Nabi having the most man of the match awards. Great. Most of them are probably against UAE, Scotland, and Oman, etc., and Netherlands, which is a shame because he's too good for that. But at the same time, you can only beat what's put in front of you. So I'm hoping they'll be better, but I'm not. I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll embarrass a few teams, but actually I think they're at the level now where they're too good to embarrass people because they are actually a decent side. It's just whether they win something like this, it'd be a massive shock. But I'd love to see it just for the sake of the country, but also it's nice to see someone win. It's not the big boys as well.
Agreed. Any other questions? No, I think Afghanistan's a pretty. I think we all kind of want to see them do well, so I think that's why we're not grilling Matt. So lucky you. Right, okay. On to the next one then. Oh, let's see who we've got.